What's up, everybody? Scott here again. This time we're going to have a formal debate with my friend Victor Vargas, who is taking the affirmative on the discussion. Does the Bible better explain existence? And we have a mod with us, my other good friend, Isaiah Diesel. Um, how you doing, man? How has it been going, brother?
Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for asking me to do this. It is my first time, so please be patient with me. But I'm going to try to be as even handed as I possibly can, even though I'm obviously biased because I'm a Christian. But I'm going to be keeping notes and taking time for you guys.
Yeah, I know you will. You're going to be fair. You wouldn't dare beat up on an atheist, would you?
I don't know about that.
How you doing, Victor?
I'm good, man. I I finally got it all ready. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's go. So we're going
Yeah.
to start off. We've got a format to this debate. So we're going to start this off with our openings, which are 5 minutes apiece. And so we'll go ahead and let Victor kick it off because he is in the affirmative. Does the Bible better explain existence? Go for it, brother.
Go.
Okay. So my whole my whole opening is based on agency. I'm not here to explain how the universe works. I'm here to explain why I believe that the Bible best explains existence. So, for example, if they tell me how the universe came into existence and you want numbers and mathematics, you're not going to get it here because that's not what I'm doing. It's basically like my wife. She gets in the car, she doesn't know how it got created together. She just knows how to turn on the key and let's go. So this is basically it because, I'm not here as such a astronomer or a cosmologist. So here we go. Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Notice that it's not saying there was nothing and then something came into existence. What it's saying is that God created the heavens and the earth. It means all existence. The scientific evidence backup that supports this is the Big Bang Theory. Second claim, the Bible makes the claim for the origin of human life. Then God said, let us make humankind in our image after our likeness, so they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the cattle and over all the earth, and over all the creatures to move on the earth. God created humankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Female, he created them. Another second claim of the origin of human life is the consciousness of mind, consciousness and mind. Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. The Lord God formed man from the soil of the ground and breathed into his nostril the breath of life. And the man became a living being. In other words, we have a body and we have a soul. Okay? The scientific support, we have debated this before, is MBE in the study of consciousness and mind, that consciousness and mind cannot be reducible to physics and chemistry. Then the Bible claims that this God creator manifested through Jesus Christ. In John 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was fully God, and the Word was with God in the beginning. All things were created by Him. I want you to pay attention to what He's saying. All things, knowledge, wisdom, love, objective moral values, the origin of human life, and the origin of the universe. As we will see, it says the Logos, in other words, the Word was with God in the beginning. All things were created by Him, and apart from Him, not one thing was created that has been created. In Him was life, and the life of mankind. Okay? The Bible says that knowledge and wisdom come from God. Proverbs 6, the Lord gives wisdom, and from his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. So there we have semiotic information come from another mind that passed on through the humankind. Okay? He says, since God exists, therefore objective moral values exist. The Bible clearly shows that God exists, and because God exists, we will see objectivity laws in our everyday life. But in my cross examination, we will see if God agrees with me. The Bible claims of life after death. Jesus Christ speaks. On John 14, he said, "Do not let your hearts be distressed. You believe in God, believe also in me. There are many dwelling places in my Father's house. Otherwise, I would have told you. Because I'm going away to make ready a place for you. And if I go and make ready a place for you, I will come again and take you to be with me, so that where I am, you may be too. And you know the way where I am going." So what do we see here? We see the claim of the origin of the universe, agency. We see that knowledge and wisdom and moral values comes from God, agency. We see that there is more than life that gives you meaning and purpose. In other words, anybody can have small meanings. We can wake up every day,
Victor,
we'll
30
go to the
seconds.
gym,
30 seconds.
okay, and we can join the gym and make it a habit or so. But our true meaning is that there is more to this physical life. Take it from here, Scotty.
All right. Thank you for
Okay.
that opening. Thank you for that
Thank you.
opening. And I'll go ahead and get started. If you want to hit the clock whenever or however you can do that, man, I'll go ahead and do it. So,
Okay, go.
all right. So the debate tonight, um, does the Bible does the Bible better explain existence? So, the first thing that my opponent said was that he's not going to give any facts, figures, or anything to really back up the claim. I guess he's not really going to do that, but just repeat claims out of the Bible, right? Well, that's not really explaining anything, unfortunately. So, what I'm going to attempt to do is show you how, even if he did try to use the Bible to actually explain the facts of the world, he would come up short, and that's the reason why he's not even going to try, because he already knows this. So let's get into origin. Genesis 1:1 starts off with, "In the beginning, God." So this is begging the question fallacy right off the bat. Where is the evidence for this God? The writer of Genesis doesn't even bother to explain why we can trust his story that starts off with a God in the very beginning without any good evidence to establish that this God exists in the first place. So it doesn't explain anything. It just says God created. What do the scholars and archaeologists say, however? Well, we're talking about this God in Genesis 1:1, commonly referred to as Yahweh. But you see, Yahweh was the Canaanite war god, and he was the son of the creator god who was called El, who also created the hosts called Elohim. Scholars generally contend that Yahweh emerged as a divine warrior associated with Seir, Edom, Paran, and Teman, and later with the nation of Canaan. Yahweh and Baal were merely two of El's 70 children, according to Canaanite mythology. Each child of El was given a region to look after. Baal rolled over Canaan, while Yahweh faithfully was assigned to the land of Israel. Asherah, at one time, was worshipped as the wife of Yahweh, who was the national god of Israel by that time. So again, Elohim is plural, refers to the pantheon of gods in Canaanite religion. And according to that religion, Elohim said in a unifying voice, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens," and on that we read in Genesis, who actually adopted that story into Israel's national religion because it was for them. Eventually, this story was adapted, and it lives on even till today. So this brings up the question: where does the Bible come from? So it's pretty self-explanatory in that story. Origins of Judaism lies in polytheistic Canaanite religion, and Judaism also secretized elements of other Semitic religions like the Babylonian religion, which is even reflected in the early prophetic books of the Hebrew Bible. You can read all about it. Um, I'm getting all this stuff from scholars, people who actually study this stuff. You know, Monotheism in Israel is a book that's devoted to the time, the beginning of the 10th century up until the end of the Babylonian exile with regard to Israel and Canaan. The Rise of Yahweh and Judahite and Israelite Religion is another book released in 1995, and it talks about all this stuff, and especially Yahwism. Genuine meaning. So let's get into meaning. Genuine meaning is derived, not prescribed by definition. So you can't get meaning from a book or an authority. Only a forced meaning can be prescribed, right? And that's called divine command theory. But that doesn't give you genuine meaning. So, no, the Bible cannot give one meaning, it can only suggest something. But if one doesn't choose that meaning, then even Jesus said to his disciples, shake the dust off your feet and keep it pushing. Matthew 10:14. The other thing we're going to talk about
30
is
seconds.
you got it. Predestination is the same thing as determinism. The only difference is that predestination says God predestined everything to happen. Determinism just says that things are determined without telling you what determined everything. It's up to scientific study. So those are the four things. I didn't have a chance to get into morality.
Time.
That's
That's
another
time. That's
big
time.
one. We'll get into it.
Okay. Well, now we're going to go into the rebuttal section. So, Victor, you can start off with the 5-minute rebuttal of Mr. Scott. Go ahead.
Okay. So you know my basic arguments are four: origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Origin. What or who created the universe? We didn't see no rebuttal there. Of course, that's his opening. But I want you to notice one thing. In his opening, he didn't say a universe came from nothing. What he said that my God was contradictory or it was a cheap copy of mythology. The best thing I could say, where is the best evidence coming from this? Even though scholar says it, there's also mythicists, Bob Price, Richard Carrier, which have been clearly debunked by another atheist called Bud Ehrman, that the best evidence of any ancient antiquity documents comes from the Bible. To deny all ancient antiquity history of the Bible is to deny all ancient antiquity. In other words, you might as well throw history down the road. Okay, so I see nothing really to rebuttal here because I don't want to turn this argument whether God is a mythology or it was a copy of mythology, even though the evidence points the opposite direction. So my question still stands. Let us assume that Elohim was a copy of mythology. Is this still, my question to Scott will still be, okay, let's say Elohim is a copy of the gods. Does it still make sense to assume that it was the gods that created a universe or that a universe comes from nothing? Not the nothing that Lawrence Krauss is talking about. The nothing that I'm talking about is no space, no energy, no matter, and no time. Which Lawrence Krauss and Mr. Kiku, or I don't know how to pronounce his name, Mr. Michio Kiku said, in the beginning there was nothing, no energy, no time, no space, no matter, nothing. So that's my questions to him of his opening because he really didn't give anything else to argue. Now, the best thing I could say, where is this evidence that this God is a copy of mythology? Because look, if Elohim was a copy of mythology, I wonder how is it that the Bible is the first book that ever talked about a God outside, which is transcendent. All these gods died and are gone. What's the best evidence for God? Jesus Christ. If Scott denies the existence and debunks the Christ resurrection, then I could fully understand that, hey, we have no God. We still have the mystery of where the universe came from. Objective moral values do exist. The meaning of life, that of course, why do we love each other? Why we must love one another? And what would happen after we die? That gives you true meaning that even though this life is temporary, at the end of it, we will see God, and we will see our loved ones, which Jesus Christ said. Do not be distressed. You believe in me, believe also in God, for there's another dwelling place. In other words, there is a heaven, there is true meaning, and there is true purpose. That's basically all I have to rebuttal for now. Go ahead, Scott.
All
Okay,
right.
thank you very much. Reset that. Scott,
All
take it
right.
away.
Here we go. So, um, with the rebuttal, I want to try to get as much as I could. So, what I'm seeing here is kind of a shifting. It's almost like if I can't really um, explain, then what is your explanation? That has nothing to do with it. The topic is really, does the Bible better explain reality? But the funny thing is that, yeah, there is better explanations from science because it's based on evidence, right? There's actually evidence and something that we can point to rather than just some concept or an idea or some false history, some mythology. As for the universe came from nothing, no, because no scientist ever said that. The laws of nature are a description of potential energies. They call it quantum foam. There's different um, models that precede the Big Bang. The Big Bang isn't to measure where the universe came from. What the Big Bang is, it's just a description of the very moments that the universe expanded from a very singular point. And there's a placeholder term for that called a singularity. What was the singularity? What came before it? No one really knows. That's the honest answer. But nothing is not on the list of things that it came from. There's quantum gravity. There's cyclical universe theory. There's multiverse theory. There's amplitude-hedron theory. There's so many different models out there that can describe mathematically how the universe could have become what it is today. But none of them have been proven. So is Elohim a copy of the gods? Well, Elohim is the origin of Genesis. What I'm arguing isn't that Elohim um, is a copy of the gods or anything like that. No, Elohim, people made up stories about gods. Elohim was this host of gods that El created along with Yahweh, his wife. There's evidence for this. It's called archaeology, and it's even in the Bible. The Bible even refers to Asherah, the way that they worshiped. They have the trees in the temple. All of those things were devoted to Asherah, the wife of Yahweh. And it was later on determined in the Bible that the Babylonian exile of the Hebrews was a punishment for how they were engaged in polytheism. So even the Bible sort of hints at their past, at Israel's past of worshiping false gods and things of that nature. So this shouldn't come as a surprise. But what it does do is it tells you where the Bible and how it evolved over time. And the story changes to fit it. This is all fact, and it's not even anything that we need to disagree about. We can read about this, and I have all the books and references that you need for that. So, anything else? I'm trying to think of anything else that he tried to rebut me on. Um, Basically, the only thing I heard was the other thing is you said objectivity, morals. So, morals you said were grounded in God. Well, objectivity is defined as realities outside of our opinion or outside of our minds, right? Well, if God's morality comes from his mind, then morality is subjective to God himself. So God is a subject. That's what a person is. Any person, character, figure, identity is a subject. And if that person has a moral or an opinion or a thought about what's right and wrong, that's their subjective morality. Subjective. If it was objective, God would have to point to something outside of himself as a reference, something that he can measure his morality against. But he doesn't do that. God is supposed to be the creator of everything. So that's kind of like a big contradiction right there. And we'll need Victor to actually explain how that works. I'd be very interested. But I'm not going to go on too much longer after that. And we'll just get on to the next point, I think, is the cross examination.
All right. So Since he went first last time, we'll go ahead and give you 5 minutes to cross-examine him, uh, Scott. So go ahead.
Okay, so let me see. I've got a few questions here. Let me just get them pulled up really quick. All right. So, are you familiar with Asherah, Victor?
No, I'm
Yes or
not.
no? No. Okay. Is Elohim plural or singular?
The way it's expressed there, I've heard it is the majestic pluralism.
Okay.
Mhm.
What does Elohim mean, by the way?
Elohim. Okay, so the way I understand Elohim was used by the Israelites instead of mentioning God's true name.
Say that again.
Elohim was used to replace God's true name because they didn't want
Oh,
to blaspheme the name of God.
yes.
So it's translated many times as the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Now, Elohim, was it always used that way?
I don't think so. No, there's many titles used on God like El Shaddai, El Nisi, but these are all Hebrew, you know, like
Gotcha.
the Lord is my banner, the God Almighty, the Lord of hosts. Yeah,
Did Yahweh have a wife and siblings?
no.
Did Yahweh have a father?
Did Yahweh have a father? So when you say Yahweh, are we saying did God have a father?
Yes.
No,
Yahweh,
God
God.
doesn't have a father.
Hmm. All right. Who is El?
Who is El? El just means God. So God is I am who I am.
So Elohim, um, what did it mean at the time? So you understand? Let me ask you this: do you know that the Canaanites invented the word El and Elohim together
I didn't know
before
that.
the yeah before the Israelites were even formed as a nation? Canaan came first, then the Israelites came later.
Right,
Canaan were already worshiping Yahweh and El and Elohim.
right.
Okay, so let me ask you this: was the earth formed before the sun?
Was the earth formed before the sun?
Yes.
I don't think so. The Bible clearly explains that everything came into existence, but there's no specific detail which one came first.
Mm. We'll have to revisit that. All
Yeah.
right. So, why are there no secular sources for the resurrection of Jesus?
Secular sources. What do you mean by secular?
Like secondary sources, like outside of the Bible, about the resurrection, like eyewitness accounts, just like the gospel. Like, are there any eyewitness accounts that exist about Jesus' resurrection in the Bible and outside the Bible? That is.
Okay, well, the New Testament is first-hand evidence. Are you saying that second, just to understand where you're coming from, are you saying that second-hand evidence is better than first-hand?
No, it's mainly just to find out where you're at on that question. Like, are there any eyewitness of Jesus' resurrection? Do you think that there is, or what?
That there is eyewitnesses?
Correct.
It's, well, of course, the whole New Testament is all about eyewitnesses, what they saw and touch and everything. Yeah.
Mm, okay. How do you define eyewitness?
How do I define eyewitnesses? Let me take the example of Paul. Paul wasn't actually there, but he saw the risen Jesus physically. You see? Now, eyewitness account would be like, for example, Peter, the doubting Thomas, when he said, I will not believe until I put my fingers inside his hands. So that's eyewitness. This is when you witness something physically.
Okay, Peter and Thomas. You said that they are eyewitness. Those are eyewitness accounts in the Bible.
Yeah, there's a lot more. I mean, there's also the four gospels. You take the writings of Paul. Um, and the Bible doesn't actually give you many names, but as you see the story of the Bible, this was an impactful event that the whole city knew about it. Even when they're testifying, he says, "Hey, remember when Peter gave his first apologia? He says, 'You crucified this Christ. All of you saw this.'"
Okay, time.
Okay.
So that's time. All right,
Oh, okay.
Victor, you can go. Victor, you can go ahead and start your cross examination. Scott.
Okay. Mr. Scott, do you agree with me that a jet engine could never come into existence without human agency?
A jet engine, yeah, because every instance or example of a jet engine we know are manufactured by people. So yes.
Yeah, it's just a basic yes or no. Okay, so yes, you agree with me?
Yep.
Okay. Two, do you agree with me that a dictionary could never come together with all its semiotics information without human agency?
Yes, that is correct.
Three, do you agree with me that if we were to wake up in Mars and see a house, we run into the house and see all necessities like food, clothing, and all kinds of survivor kits, that I am rational to believe that someone had to prepare such a house for human survival? In other words, another human in made up that house. Do you agree?
Uh, could have been, if I want to be technical, I could say it could be a robot, but you know, or a 3D
Okay.
printer.
All
But
right.
let's just give you the benefit and say yes, of course.
Okay. Four, do you agree that if we were to find the computer of a murderer and his confession was recorded in the PC, that we could discover such information stored in the internal memory drive?
Whoa, say that again.
Okay. Do you agree that if we were to find the computer of a murderer, somebody who assassinated people, and his confession was recorded in the PC, that we could discover such information stored in the internal memory drive, in the hard drive?
Yeah, we could by principle. Yep.
Okay. Now let's go farther. Now imagine we find the murderer dead. We have no computer, no external evidence of the murder ever committing such action. All we have is multiple testimonies. Could we dig into his brain, open it up, and find such information and maybe scenes of what happened at the murder scene by digging into his brain?
No, of course not.
Perfect. Five, is it ever okay to murder an innocent grown man?
To murder someone?
Is
No,
it ever okay to murder an innocent grown man?
no,
Okay. Is there any part of the world that this action could be valid without calling it evil?
no, because murder by definition is an unjust thing.
Yeah. Are you a determinist atheist?
Uh, I lean determinism. Yeah.
Seven. Do you agree with me that if my kid tells me there's a dragon in my closet, that if he is the only one that sees the dragon, that I would be justified not to believe such a dragon exists?
Yeah, you wouldn't be justified off hearsay.
Okay. Now, would you agree with me that if the whole neighborhood, even the city, tells me that the kid was not lying because their kid saw this dragon also, that if that there is a probability, would I be justified to believe now that this dragon exists due to too many eyewitness testimony?
No,
There's so even if the whole neighborhood saw this, it's not valid.
not to say it's a dragon. No.
So one witnesses saw it, but there was no other one, only sin. But then now you have the whole city telling you that this dragon exists. The probability is that it doesn't exist.
Yeah, me as an outsider to think that it's a dragon. No, I'm not believing it.
Okay. All right. Jesus Christ existed. He claimed to be God. How did you falsify the resurrection of Jesus Christ?
Oh, say that one more time. I missed that.
Okay. Jesus Christ existed. He claimed to be God. How did you falsify the resurrection of Jesus Christ?
Because it's not falsifiable. So I didn't falsify it because it can't be falsified. It's not falsifiable.
Okay, it can
It
be.
cannot be proven not true. It can't be proven not true.
Okay, perfect. Nine. Could
Yeah,
you
30
explain
seconds.
to me? Oh, okay. Could you explain to me that if the Bible is a false book, how does it best explain reality and existence?
If it's a false book,
Yes.
how does it best explain reality?
Yeah. How is it that
Um,
it best explain reality?
I don't think it does.
Okay.
And
All
that's
right.
time. That's time.
I like that.
That's great. That's a great way to answer the question. So, okay, that's time. I'm gonna start on the 45 minutes of open discussion. Then I think we have
Okay.
questions and closing statement. So we have 45 minutes. I am gonna take my camera off because my daughter might be coming home right now from the hospital. So
Okay.
I will be coming in and off of camera, but I will be right here. So 45
Okay.
minutes starts right now.
All right.
Okay. Perfect. Um, yeah. Go ahead and ask me something,
Okay,
Victor.
Scotty. Um, so my whole question is this, right? That it is a proven fact. So far, the best evidence that we have is the Big Bang Theory. I don't know if you want to go to the details. Why is the best evidence? I have it recorded here by a scientific journal. So my question to you is: it has a beginning, and the cosmological argument is so strong. I want to know how you see it. For example, whatever begins to exist had a cause. You
Hmm.
know the William Lane Craig. I don't even have to go for it because, like you said, you've seen all many debates. How do you explain the cause of the universe then? If it had a
Okay.
beginning,
Hmm.
what was what's the probability? I mean, we all we have is assertions, right? But let's see what can you come up best.
Okay. So you're looking for an opinion. So I'm not going to tell you what I think is what I'm going to sit here and say is the absolute truth,
Yeah, I
because
understand.
here's the problem. Science is about measuring what can be measured, right? If it cannot be measured, science can't say anything about it one way or the other. All it can do is go, one day, hopefully, we'll be able to measure it. So when we're talking about singularities, you know, everything breaks down at a certain point. And this point is called 10 to the minus 33 centimeters. That's the Planck length. That means that's the smallest resolution that we can get as far as looking at a singularity. Beyond that, the laws of physics just don't make any sense. They sort of dissolve away, right? So it's 10 to the 33, negative 33 centimeters. Beyond that, we don't know what existed. So, say like the universe began at 10 to the minus 30, we can measure all the way back to that point, and then we can start telling a story about how this thing evolved into our classical understanding of physics. But obviously, what came before the classical expansion of physics is something we cannot describe. So if I was to say this singularity is all loving, it's all knowing, it's personal, it answers my prayers, I'm adding a lot of stuff to that property that I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm just making stuff up at that
Wait,
point.
just to make sure, are you saying that the singularity could be the God or the God that we're claiming it to be?
Um, you could say that similarly, similar.
Yeah,
But
but
the
that would mean
difference
that
is, I wouldn't want to disrespect. The thing is, I'm on the fence about using the terminology of God, because God also means other things to people. Like God has intentionality. He's personal. He has volition. He has a will of his own. He has all these properties that I could never explain how a singularity has all of those things. So if I was to say singularity is God, that's just like a placeholder name. It's like just something that's all powerful, created everything, and from what
Yeah.
and we know nothing about it.
Okay, but that singularity is existed itself, no? That singularity is where everything came from. In other
It's
words, it is the starting point. So I wouldn't call God the singularity. I would call, for example, you have the dot here and you have a big bang. I would bring a banger and go banger. I would be the banger on the singularity and everything then expands. So I wouldn't
you're
call the singularity.
misunderstanding what a singularity is. Then singularities don't exist in time and space.
Right.
Singularities exist outside of time and space.
Okay.
They exist in a dimension that we can't measure. That's what I'm saying. All we can measure is what's in time and space. And
Right.
what's in time and space for space, it's 10 to the minus 33 centimeters. For time, it's 10 to the minus 44 centimeters. So for time, that's called Planck length.
Right.
So that's all we can measure. So this singularity, by definition, is outside of time and space. So the
Yeah,
good
but
question is, how do they know that? How do they know something exists outside of time and space?
okay, so there is a lot of mathematical impossibilities.
Say it again.
Is it in a mathematical impossibility, but it still started? So just because you don't know what or who, it had to be still caused by something. Unfortunately, we fall into this false dichotomy. Is either a who or a what? I'm just asking you a simple opinion. Do you think probably it was a who or it was a what?
Right now, I can
What would
only
you say?
argue for a what. I can't argue for a who because to say, see, here's part of my epistemology, and this is a question I have for you. Like
Okay.
for epistemology, my epistemology, part of it is to make the least amount of assumptions as possible, right? Why would I make the least amount of assumptions as possible? Because the more you assume into your idea, that's the more points of failure you can have. Like if I say, well, if this, then this, but then if this, then that. And then if I keep adding that stuff up, I'm building my house on wet sand, like I'm building it on a bunch of ifs.
Well, I don't agree because
Right. So what I'm saying is, so when I explain things, I don't go for a lot of ifs. Like it could be God. If God exists, then it could be this, that, and that. But that's a lot of ifs. I can't demonstrate that, and no one else seems to be able to outside of an argument, and that's the
well,
problem.
well, I don't know if I'm understanding you. What I'm understanding you right, just because we don't know what God is or who God is, that therefore we don't want to fall into these ifs. But I'm still saying, listen, if I find my math is limited, I only know division, multiplication, subtraction, and addition, right? My math is limited. But if I find a book here of pure mathematics, and one of the scientists says the mystery of the universe is that it's comprehensible. So here's what I'm saying. If I find a giant book of mathematics, and even though I don't know the mathematics, am I still wrong to assume a who had to make all these formulas in this math book? Or would you
If
say a what?
if you think in a if your epistemology is to think in a scientific way, then yeah, you would be wrong to assume anything. You don't want to assume anything. Now it's okay. Now here's the caveat that I'll give you.
No, no, just listen.
It's okay to make hypotheses, even wild ones. Like
Yeah,
as long as
yeah,
you
I
can
know you're
back it
being
up with
scientific,
evidence.
but I'm just trying to see a rational mind. What I'm not trying to be scientific. What I'm asking you is that if this book was full of mathematic formulas, am I irrational to believe that a who made this book? Am I irrational?
Oh, of course. Yeah, because we know that people write mathematical equations. So
And
that's
that's
not
exactly what I'm trying to make a point to you that even though, like you're saying it, even though I don't know how an engine gets put together. I don't know how a car gets put together. I've seen it on YouTube, and yeah, okay, it takes a human agent to put something together, right? We have
mhm.
never, out of our experience, we have never witnessed a car coming in together by chance. I don't want to fall. I don't want to argue. We can talk about the watchmaker policy, but I think that's a very bad policy because I'm still going to ask. Listen, just like the car. you still have a watch, and it takes an agent to create a car, it takes an agent to create a watch. I'm still lost for words how an atheist comes and says, well, we don't know yet, but one day we will know. And that sounds like blind faith.
Well, there's categories. You have to break the world in categories to make sense of it.
Right.
So let's look at it this way. Do you or is your claim that God created everything? I think you said in your opening, everything, nothing that exists didn't came without God creating it, right?
So, okay, what we mean is all physical. All
All
physical.
physical things, right?
Right.
So all
Like,
physical things were created by God, right?
right, all physical existence was created by God. I would also say, okay, God created love, and with the love comes with the possibility of evil, right?
Okay, that's another, we'll get to that, but
All
I'm
right.
just getting to this one little thing. You
Yeah,
said
God
God, all
created
the
all the
physical
existence.
things like trees and
Yes.
mountains and beautiful sunsets, God
Yes.
created all of those physical things, right?
Right.
Okay. So, and then you mentioned that, you can pick up a book and see all these math equations and you can reasonably infer that a human must have wrote that. A human with a mind, with a very intelligent mind, must have written that, right?
Yes.
Now, the reason I'm asking you this is because we have categories. So, and the reason we have categories, I'll explain it this way. If you if everything in the world was created by God, all these physical things, then how do you know the difference between an unmade thing or an undesigned thing from a designed thing since everything is designed?
That's a great question. Now, watch this. Let's take another stroll into reality. We're walking by the beach and we see a perfect triangle of rocks. You and me could argue. I could say, oh, look, somebody made a triangle. And you could say, Vic, that's a static design. The waves in the ocean could have created that. And eventually it formed a triangle and it appears a triangle to you. I totally agree. I would be like, you know what? Maybe 13 billion years could have taken that perfect triangle could have formed by the waves and going back. But we can scientifically show how could that be done because we know some basic science how the waves moves and the rolling of the rocks and gravity and everything. But here's what I'm saying. If we keep walking further and we see writing on the beach that it says, hello, Scott, I am Jesus, whom you are denying. Are you going to say that came on by chance?
No, I would say that was created by a mind. In fact, that would be one of my we talk about falsification and what would it take to make you believe if the stars lined up in a certain way where God says, I am God and I say Christianity is true, and wrote a big message, everybody could see it, it's obvious. Yeah, why wouldn't I believe that there was something supernatural out there talking to me? Now, it wouldn't be
Okay,
proof.
but wait a
It
minute.
wouldn't
You
be
just
proof
so
because
wait.
proof.
So so if you find the writing on the beach, it won't help you believe. But if you find the writing on the space, it would be a
No,
stronger
if
evidence.
I'm saying that's the same thing. If it was the beach, it would be the same thing. But I've never seen that, and I have no reason. It's like you
Wait.
appeal to
So
experience. You said that everything in our experience tells us that when we see a book or we see a car or we see something, we know that it was designed by human minds. That's all in our experience. And
right,
so, therefore, wouldn't it be reasonable to assume that all these other things are created by a mind, just not people's mind, maybe a god,
right,
right? But
right.
the problem with that is now we've never seen the things that are categorized as minds creating stuff.
Okay,
That's why the only time we see that, the only time we see that is when you said humans make books, human make cars, we don't see God making cars and things like that. We see trees and
okay.
sand and rocks and things that could be formed naturally.
So if you see God creating something, then it would convince you.
Of course, if it be evidence, yeah.
Okay, but I've never seen anybody create a car from the start. It said on YouTube, and I still see agencies, so I don't have to see. Somebody creating it. I still see, I can still, watch this, I can still assume agency. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm asking. See, here's what I'm telling you. You say if you see it on the, if you see it written, watch this. If you see it written on the beach and if you see it written in the space, so what's the difference seeing in a written book? Is the same thing.
Okay. But the thing is, we have examples like I write books, I read books, I
Right,
create things, I make things myself. So I
right.
know. So this is the thing, Victor. This is the thing that this is called the argument from incredulity. So what happens is we have to understand categories of things. This goes back to that again. So if someone told me, for example, suppose Victor comes up to me and says, "Hey Scott, I walked my dog yesterday. Scott, do you believe me?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I believe you, Vic." You'd be like, "Yeah, but you didn't see it. You don't even know if I have a dog. You don't have all the evidence to show that I walked the dog, this and that, this and that." And I would say, "Yeah, I could be wrong, but my opinion is that it wouldn't surprise me because the fact is I've seen dogs. We have a whole phylogeny of dogs, descriptions of what dogs are. We see people walking dogs every day. So the claim I'm walking dog is a mundane claim. It's like, did Jesus exist? Yeah, humans existed. So the fact that Jesus exists shouldn't be a big surprise that a man named Jesus exists. It's a common name, a common person that lived in a common
Yeah, but why should I care that?
location.
Yeah, but here's the big thing. I want to move now into this. Why should I care that a Jesus existing? Why should I care? Why should humanity care? And why does it grab over billions of people's attention? Let me give you an example. Every scholar agreed that the most scrutinized book in the world is the Bible. The big thinkers that you know of, C.S. Lewis, Simon Greenleaf, you know who, I don't know if you know who Simon Greenleaf is. He's the one, he was the mocker Harvard lawyer who used to mock the Christians to say, "Hey man, the Bible is false. Why are you guys keep reading the Bible?" Now watch this. High intellectual Harvard law lawyer Simon Greenleaf was an atheist. C.S. Lewis, an atheist. Sean McDowell. I'm no, I'm sorry, not Sean. I'm a Judge McDowell. And here's what intrigues me: all these people have been trying to falsify this book, right? But why? Forget the fact that they accepted Christ. I know they accepted Christ because of the evidence, according to them. But what I'm asking you is, why so much attention on Jesus? And I made this clear to you that even my grandfather's name was Jesus, but I should care because he was my grandpa, and I would love to know who more about him. But this Jesus, if he was just coming, why such a following? Nobody's bothered. Listen, there. When I go and research about Muhammad, I don't see Bud Ehrman struggling to write books against Muhammad. I don't see Richard Carrier struggling to write books against Muhammad. Why so much attention on this man? I'll tell you why, Scotty. This is the only man in history, in humankind history, who said, "I am God." I don't believe. I wouldn't believe it if my brother was to come to me and say, "Hey Vic, I'm God," I'll probably slap him. I said, "Mom, we need to take this dude. Let's take him to the hospital." But if my brother says, "Okay, Vic, I know you don't believe me, but I'm going to die, and 3 days later I will bodily rise again," then here's your simple task, Scotty. All you have to do is debunk the resurrection and say, "Guess what, Vic?
But see,
Hey, there is no there is no Jesus claiming to be God."
here's the problem. Even in a simple court of law, miracles aren't stories aren't going to be accepted. These claims that were made in the Bible are not eyewitness claims. No eyewitness wrote the Bible and wrote what they saw. These were interviews. These were at best literature about who they knew, talked to, and a story. No one even saw Jesus resurrect out of the tomb. No one even saw that. all you've got is the story of people who said that the stone was rolled away, this and that. Um, there's so many holes that you could actually poke into that story if you wanted to. And this, I think, is why the Bible is under such scrutiny for over the thousands of years. You have to understand the New Testament, Christianity, was monopolized by Rome. Rome used Christianity to its advantage, and they were able to unite the people under the one umbrella, the Christian umbrella.
Okay,
And
but
so
yeah,
when
but that doesn't
all of these
falsify.
different well, hold on just a second. I'm
Yeah.
almost done. When all of these cultures fought with Rome, and Rome went to conquer other cultures and expand its, its territories. Of course, it's going to be, and then the Roman Catholic Church was then, for that very reason, seated at the top to be the theological theocracy arm of the Roman government. And so, yeah, it's no wonder that it's under all of that scrutiny. But the other fact is that we know that there are forgeries in the Bible, like the Paul, who arguably started Christianity, who has the earliest writings, even before the Gospels. His letters were. He has like what 6 or 7 authentic letters. The rest of them are forgeries, and this is
Well,
commonly known to be
okay,
forgeries. He
all right,
mentions people, places, things happened way after his death.
okay.
You know.
So let's go there for a minute. Okay,
Hmm.
how do you explain that if these were forgeries, God, they were willing to die for a lie? Who is willing to die for a lie? Do you have any record of any ancient document that somebody claimed it to be true, but it was totally a lie, and that he was willing to die for it? Do you have any account on that in history? That somebody literally died for a
Yeah,
lie and
like
they invent?
the people who died for David Koresh thought that he was God, saw him do miracles.
But
The
yeah, but look
person
what
of
you just said.
Sai Baba was another
Right,
Indian
right.
prophet. Well, I'm just
They
answering your question just a second. He
right.
had millions of eyewitnesses to his miracles, and they gladly went to prison. Some died for their faith in this man who they say resurrected people, resurrected himself, did all of these things. So it's possible. So we
Right.
have a precedent. It's possible.
No, no, no. Here's my question. Listen what you just said. They thought, and I could agree with you.
No, they
For
witnessed. They
example,
said they witnessed.
okay, watch this now. Jim Jones. A lot of people went to die with him, right? Remember
Hmm.
the James Jones, the
Oh
what do you
yeah,
call it? The Kool-Aid man? I don't know if
Kool Aid. Drink it. Don't drink the Kool Aid.
right?
Yep.
But notice one key factor here. They all thought they were following the truth. These guys didn't thought. I want to read something carefully for you so you can understand why the Bible is so strong on this. Watch. I want to read this. It's very short. Oops. Oh, okay. I'm kind of nervous. I'm trying to spell this right. Hold on. Because I haven't been live in a while. Okay. Watch this. This is what we proclaim to you. What was from the beginning, that what we have heard, we have seen with our eyes, that we have looked at, and our hands have touched concerning the word of life. And the life was revealed. And we have seen and testified and announced to you the eternal life that was from the Father and was revealed to us. What we have seen and heard, we announce to you too, so that you may have fellowship with us. And indeed, our fellowship is with the Father and His Son, Jesus Christ. Thus, we are writing these things that our joy may be complete. In other words, they didn't think they were following the truth. They saw it, they witnessed it.
What is that in the book of Acts?
No, this is the book of First John, first chapter.
Okay.
So, but I'm
Again,
but
that's just
here,
a claim. So
right? So, but what's the claim though? Here's the difference. Okay, all these other people thought they were dying for the truth, and that was my question. If they knew that it was a lie, look at the James Jones situation. Before they went to the Kool-Aid situation, everybody thought James Jones was this Messiah. But something fishy started going on in there. A lot of people wanted to run away because they say, wait a minute, this ain't right. So the ones who started to questioning Jim Jones, knowing that he was alive, they didn't want to be there anymore. So that was my question to you. Is there anything in history that shows that somebody literally invented something and it was a lie and he went to die for it?
Jim Jones, David Koresh, Osama bin Laden, the
No,
people who flew
no,
the
they
airplanes in
didn't
the
die for a lie.
911, they had beliefs in something and they were willing to die for it.
Right?
So
No, no, no,
here's the
no.
thing.
But did
So
they know it was a lie?
did they know it was a lie? No, I don't think they knew it was a
That's
lie.
what I'm asking
They
you. So,
they
so
they
what
were
I'm asking.
probably very sincere. So
There you go.
they
That's
were
what I'm trying to.
sincere.
That right there. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's what I'm
Yeah,
trying to tell you.
I
That
know what you're getting at. I
yeah.
do. I'm following you. What I'm saying though is that is that may to your credulity that may be proof to you. That may be convincing for you. But when you think about the claim that we're talking about, you're talking about a man who was God rising from the dead, who no one witnessed happen. All of the stories we have are not even eyewitness accounts, but people
Can
who
you
wrote about
elaborate on?
eyewitnesses.
Okay.
It's this goes back to epistemology.
Okay. Before you
Um,
go any further, can you elaborate when you meant witness? Do you mean that actually they were inside the tomb and saw it, or that's what you're
of
hoping to
course,
see?
the story is that no one saw him literally raised from the dead. No one
Okay. So
saw him do
nobody
that.
saw him literally from the dead. Okay. Well, before you go any further, let's discuss that for a minute. Okay, let me see where you at this because I think that's a key point here.
Mm-hmm.
You see me, I get shot. The doctor tells you I'm dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the same question that was asked about Ehrman, but I don't, and I'm sorry to say this, but I don't think he was honest enough to admit it. He just said it was something weird. But I want to see what you said.
Go ahead.
If you are literally in front of me and bam, 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 somebody kills me. The doctors tell you the ambulance come, I'm dead. I
Mm-hmm.
got three shots in my heart, one in my brain. And you look at me and say, man, why they kill Vic? I wonder what he do, right? 3 days later, I come to you and you physically touch me and you have evidence that I died. What does that tell you?
That tells me
Did
that
you have to
something
be in?
really
Did you have to be there
no.
literally when I rose up, or do you know for a fact now that, hey, I did resurrect from the dead?
Yes, of course. But again, these are stories, and these bodies of Jesus aren't even the same body according to them. According to them, these bodies were of look like different people, like the story of Mary when she said met Jesus on the road or whatever. Different person, but then she knew it was him because of the way he spoke and stuff like that. And it was always those kind of things. Paul was the only one who really vouched for a true eyewitness account, but even his account was a vision at best. um that was a vision. Anybody can say they saw something in a vision. This must have
Okay,
been
but
Jesus coming back from after rising to heaven. He must have came back on his
okay,
second
well,
coming
I,
and
I'm
visit
glad you
Paul.
mentioned Paul because it seems to me
Hey,
that you like.
hold on 1 second. 1 second. We have about 15 more minutes of open discussion, and you guys please try to watch the overtalk because yeah, let's try to let each other finish. Okay.
All right.
Okay, so let's go to Paul. Paul was after the church, as you know that. Paul was after. He basically wanted to imprison everybody, right?
Wait. Paul was after the church?
Yeah, after the Church of Christ.
Oh, you mean out to get the church, the
Yeah,
people? Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. Paul was after to get to church. Paul wanted nothing to do with Jesus,
According to
right?
the story, according to his
Yes,
story,
of
yeah.
course, according to the story. Now, how do you explain an enemy of the Christians? Number one, having a supposed vision. He saw Jesus. The ones on the side didn't literally see Jesus, but they heard the noises. But Paul saw Jesus. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now watch this. According to Paul, he was doing exactly what Jehovah wanted. So how do you explain his change? And as far as you said that Paul started Christianity, let's read about it. Let me see if he started it. I want to read to you first. I don't know if you want to follow me. First Corinthians
Uh-huh.
chapter 15. It says here. Now I want to make clear for you, brothers and sisters, the gospel that I preach to you, that you receive, and on which you stand, by which you are being saved. If you hold firmly to the message I preached to you, unless you believe in vain. For I have passed on to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures, and that he was buried, and then that he was raised on the third day according to the scriptures. And he appeared to Caiaphas, or Peter, then the 12. Then he appeared to more than 500 of the brothers and sisters at one time, most of whom are still alive, though some have fallen asleep. Then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles. Last of all, as though to one born at the wrong time, he appeared to me also. For I am the least of the apostles, unworthy to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God. So what I want you to see here is this. He died in the year 65, 64, I believe. He could have
Mm-hmm.
said, hey man, wait. It was just a vision. Don't shut my head off. He didn't. How do you
Well, see,
explain the change? How do you explain this change of mind?
I can easily explain it because one thing about it, after studying Paul, especially from information from Jewish books and sources, real old sources, real new sources, and people that I've watched on YouTube and read about. Um, Paul became an enemy of the church before he passed on. This is reflected in the authentic letters, the ones that you refer to, the Corinthians, the portions of Acts, the First, Second Timothy, Thessalonians, all of these things. Those are forgeries after the church was well established, and they got Paul's look better. They did a lot of PR work for Paul, and it was obvious. But the one authentic book that Paul did write or letter was Galatians. And if you read through Paul's life, where he's so angry in Galatians, he says, "Look, I'm selling myself. I assure you before God that what I am writing to you is no lie. I went to Syria, Cilicia. I was personally unknown to all the churches and people there in Judea that are in Christ. Even the apostles, they only heard the report. The man who formerly persecuted us is now saying he is of the faith, and yet he once tried to destroy us." So Paul saw he wanted power in the church. He saw that church forming at its early days, and so he made up a story, a conversion story. He didn't see Christ himself because he was that was a time after Jesus already died. So the only way he could see Christ was through a vision. So he sold him that story. And the apostle Paul fought against the apostles. He fought against the elders and all of those different churches he went to, proclaiming, "Hey, I am an apostle." They all rejected him. Paul said they're all hypocrites. They're hypocrites. And he goes. You can read Galatians. You can read all these letters. He's putting down all the
Okay,
leaders.
can
Let me finish.
okay, you
What I'm saying,
from
Victor.
Galatians?
Yeah, what I'm saying,
Okay.
Victor, is if you go to like Galatians, like for example, 1:20 through 24, you can see some of this writing.
Okay, can I
Um,
read it?
yeah, sure.
Because what you're claiming is just totally different in Galatians, where it says, Now, I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that the gospel I preach to you is not of human origin, for I did not receive it or learn it from any human source. Now,
Mm-hmm.
watch what's going on here. Instead, I received it by the revelation of Jesus Christ. For you have heard of my former life in Judaism. I was savagely persecuting the church
Yep.
of God and trying to destroy it.
Exactly. Yep.
Watch. Now, I was advancing in Judaism beyond many contemporaries in my nation and was
That's a lie.
extremely zealous for the tradition of my ancestors.
That's a
Now,
lie.
when the one who set me apart from birth and called me by his grace was pleased to reveal his son in me so that I could preach him among the Gentiles, I did not go ask advice from a human being, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to see those who were apostles before me. But right away I departed to Arabia and then returned to Damascus. Now, watch what's going on here now. Then, after 3 years, I went up to Jerusalem to visit Caiaphas and get him.
Uh-oh, you froze.
Watch what's going on here. I assure you that before God, I am not lying about what I am writing to you. Afterward, I went to the region of Syria and Sicilia, but I was personally unknown to the churches of Judea or in Christ. They're only hearing the one once persecuted is now proclaiming the good news. So the faith he once tried to destroy, so they glorify God because of me. In other words, in other words, what you're saying doesn't hold water to what he's testifying with his own
No,
words
it
here.
it, 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 it it fits perfect. That's exactly, you're just
So,
repeating what I
okay,
just
but
said. He's
that,
selling himself to the Christians as, look, I'm an apostle. I spoke to Jesus. So what I'm suggesting to you is that it is possible that he was a liar, that he was just trying to get power and trying to become a leader in a church where most people rejected him.
well,
And he
let
admitted that. But then later on, the letters, they cleaned his look up. So all I'm saying is that you have to show me how it's not possible that
okay.
Paul could have been lying.
I was okay. So I'm going to keep reading now. Chapter 2. Look what it says. Then after 14 years, I went up to Jerusalem again with Barnabas, taking Titus along too. I went there because of a revelation presented to them the gospel that I preach among the Gentiles, but I did so only in private meeting with the influential people to make sure that I was not running or had not run in vain. In other words, when he first got the gospel, notice what he says: I went to preach it without affirmation that it was the true gospel. But then 14 years later, he goes back and he says, yet he says this: I preach that I have not run in vain. Yet not even Titus, who was with me, was compelled to be circumcised, although he was Greek. Now, this matter arose because of the false brothers and false pretenses who slipped in unnoticed to spy on our freedom that we have in Christ Jesus to make us slaves. But we did not surrender to them, even for a moment, in order for the truth of the gospel to remain with you. Now, watch this. But from those who were influential, whatever they were makes no difference to me. God shows no favoritism between people. Those influential leaders added nothing to my message. In other words, he received the message without affirmation. Then he goes back 14 years and he's saying, I am not lying. We are preaching the same thing. And he says here, on the contrary, when they saw that that I was entrusted with the gospel to the uncircumcised, just as Peter was entrusted with the gospel to the circumcised. For he who empowered Peter on his apostleship to the circumcised also empowered me for the apostleship to the Gentiles. And when James, Caiaphas, and John, who had a reputation as pillars, recognized the grace that had been given to me, they gave to Barnabas and me the right hand of fellowship, agreeing that we would go to the Gentiles and they too to the circumcised. They requested only that we remember the poor, the very thing I also eager to do. So, in other words, here's what I'm going to explain to you. He received, it seems to me that this vision told him a reality thing. Because he received the gospel, he said he received it from Jesus Christ. Without him affirming of the gospel, he left for 3 years without affirming. But then he says, you know what? I'm going to make sure that I'm doing the right gospel, that I'm not preaching something different. He went 14 years back and he says nobody added nothing to him. My second point, which I don't agree to that, is because we still come to the factor: why would somebody die for a lie? This man had everything. Like he's telling you, hey, I was the least of the apostles. I'm not even worthy to be called an apostle because I persecuted the church. So it doesn't make sense. That's why I was asking you: is there anywhere in history that somebody will literally die for a lie? There is nothing. Nobody's
But it
going to die
doesn't
for a lie.
matter. But see, that's the whole thing. I don't understand what's so incredulous about that. Like anybody can lie, but they do it all the time. People lie. They say that, hey, I was the guy that hated you guys. I persecuted you. Now I'm one of you. Um, and he claims that 14 years later that there's no different gospel, but we already know that he opposed Cephas. Um, he
Yeah,
opposed
he
him to
opposed
his
Cephas
face.
because
Certain
why?
men
Why did he
came
do
from
that?
James he used to eat with, the Gentiles, but when they arrived, he began to draw back and separate himself from the Gentiles because he was afraid of those who belonged to the circumcision group. So there was a big chasm right there in the church. They argued about that. You can read it in Acts and all of the different um, conferences that they held to decide on that matter. So it's not like this isn't a human construction and there weren't disagreements. So none of this stuff really rings to me a reason to believe that the Bible actually better explains existence. It just doesn't. It's it's stories that people claim and tell. And when we look at it in depth, there are no eyewitnesses. The only eyewitness we have is Paul, and he's eyewitness to his own mental state, his own hallucination. Um, I don't see any reason to think that the Bible better explains existence from anything else. Naturalism explains the problem of evil a lot better. On
Okay,
theism, the problem of evil is not resolved by God, nor is the problem of divine hiddenness. Those are all different problems that exist under theism, especially under Christianity. Um, Naturalism hasn't got that problem because there is no agency or great God mind that caused evolution and all the suffering and unnecessary suffering and evil that exists.
Hey
On
guys, we got 4 more
theism,
minutes.
all
We
right,
got
okay.
4 more minutes.
Isaiah
I got a
45
question
7.
for you because you say you are determinist. Did I hear you right, Scotty?
Yeah, I'm a determinist. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for you that I didn't have a chance to ask, and I'm eager because I'm very curious. I heard something interesting the other day. So what I want you to, okay, now watch this. There is no God, uh, but do you agree that there's still objective moral values?
Objective moral values, I don't
Yeah.
see. Most philosophers, atheist philosophers, think so.
Okay, but
And
you do you think there's
I
objective
don't
moral
know.
values?
I don't know, to be quite
Okay,
honest with you.
so watch this. There is no God, and if determinism, we're determined to do what we do, right?
Hmm.
Okay. How would you, okay, if you are a determinist atheist, can you please explain to me how would you defend a murderer in a courtroom, supposing that he confesses himself that he was determined to murder the innocent 1 year old baby? How would you defend him in a federal court of law within the paradigm of your
I wouldn't defend anybody like that, to be quite honest. If I knew that this person murdered a 1 year old baby, I would want to send him to jail or death penalty.
but
I'd
wait a
want him
minute,
out of there.
but he was determined to murder the babies.
Don't matter. What does that got to do with it? He's a harm to society. We know that he's determined to do that. So why not put him behind bars or kill him? Because he can't help himself. So, you can put him behind bars, or you can find out what if the technology exists at that point in time where we could actually remedy the situation. Maybe he has like a bad gene, or he has something. We use CRISPR to go in there and extract the gene that causes him to be a murderer or have these inclinations. But other than that, no, I wouldn't see determinism as a way of letting him go freely. That doesn't make sense.
That's exactly my point. If determinism is true, you are rising above determinism, and you're actually saying that even though he is claiming to be determined, he's still guilty. But if he's
Yeah.
determined to do what he was supposed to do, how could you blame him? It's like me blaming the computer to act in the way it does. When I disconnect the computer, it's determined to go off. But if it stays
Because
off,
human beings are causal objects. We're in a causal chain. So there's reasons why you behave a certain way, j- just like everybody else. So if there are pre if there are preconditions that cause you to speak a certain language, think a certain way about life because it's part of your culture, maybe wear certain clothes because it's the time and culture you live in. All of these things were predetermined for you. When you were born in this world, you were born speaking a certain language, all of these things. Those are things fine. But you're also a causal agent. In other words, you can influence the world by creating new fashions, creating new language, creating new
wait,
properties in the
but
in the
but
world.
but Scott, if
You
I am
can
the
do that.
but if the individual is determined, he can't help himself. Listen to what you're saying. If determinism is true in a court of law, if me personally, I can't defend him because to me, I believe in God and I believe in objective moral value. Objective moral values means independent of human opinions, and you identify that a little earlier. So what I'm saying is, if determinism exists, I'm sorry, if determinism is true, and he is determined to murder that child, there's no way I could say, hey, he's guilty. For example, we a lion is determined to
I
eat
would
the zebra.
disagree with you, but you have the right to feel that way. I can see the reason why you would feel that way, but I wouldn't agree with you, and I would
And
just say
that's
you were
time.
wrong.
That's time. Okay, so do we have any questions, Scott? Are we gonna take questions?
No, let's go ahead with the questions. First of all, what did you think about the debate so far,
Oh,
my
so we do
friend?
the closing and then questions, or questions and then
He's gonna mod. He's gonna answer. Then we're gonna have Q&A, and then we'll do our closing at the end.
So you want me to give my opinion? Is that what you said?
Yeah, just what do you think about the debate so far?
Okay, well, you guys are very respectful. I could say that right off the top. So that's nice. If I would have been there every moment, there was a couple of times you guys were interrupting that I didn't exactly like. But for the most part, you let each other finish. I will say there is a bit of a problem with one of the things that he was talking about as far as people dying for a lie. Or no one. He said no one is claiming to be God. Actually, a lot of people claim to be God. So that's a factually inaccurate statement to say. There's a lot of you mentioned Sai Baba though,
Mm-hmm.
but you can actually the bad thing about YouTube is that well the good thing I should say bad thing for them is you can actually see him doing a lot of his miracles allegedly online,
Mm-hmm.
and you could just see the sleight of hand. He's doing basically magician type stuff. So yeah, there are people who fake stuff for the
Yep.
clout or recognition. For instance, you mentioned Jim Jones, but Jim Jones himself was an atheist, and he knew that he could hijack elements of Christianity to. He was basically a sexual deviant. You know, he's having sex with all the guys and all the women inside of his congregation. So he grifted a lot of people, but he knew exactly what he was doing was a lie. So yeah, people can lie for various different reasons. So I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a bit of faulty thinking on both of your guys' side there.
well, if I can correct,
Yep.
I agree with the statement that it's true. There's a lot of people claiming to be God, but nobody really proved it. Only Jesus Christ. That is true. The way you say the faulty statement, that's true. Now, my question was, why should I care about a Jesus? I mean, this Jesus, the reason I have to go to him is because this guy, Jesus Christ, is claiming to be the God of all existence.
Hmm.
That's why I was trying to make that little question there. But yeah, the statement should have been there's a lot of people claiming to be God, but nobody proved to be God. Only Jesus Christ proved it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Proven.
well, you're preaching to the choir in that sense because I'm a Christian, but I don't think that I don't know. It might be provable because you're like you assume things. I think you're assuming too much about the Bible and about Jesus. So I think in this kind of conversation, it's next to impossible to try to prove something like that about Jesus in the Bible. But it was interesting. I will say that much.
Yeah. So if we have any questions, I don't know if we have a big enough audience out there right now. I guess we'll give it a few minutes, but I guess my take on that um, is yeah, it's not falsifiable. That doesn't mean it's not true. It just means that you see if something's falsifiable, then we have a better reason to think that it's true. Like if I say like if the Big Bang is false, then we shouldn't see any red shift. We shouldn't see any cosmic background radiation. That's the prediction. But guess what? We detect cosmic background radiation in redshift light, right? So that helps us to understand that we can't falsify the Big Bang on those two criteria. In fact, those two criteria actually show up in the evidence and the data. So it
Hey, Scott.
lends credit.
Scott, my daughter just got back here from the hospital, so just give me a minute. I'll be back
Sure,
in
sure, no problem. And I don't know if anyone's going to ask questions, Victor. So if you want, we can go right into the closings.
We don't have no
Um,
people watching it so far.
yeah, we have like two people, but they're not, or three people here, it looks like, but they're not asking any questions yet. So I was thinking if you want to go ahead and give your closing, you can, or if you want me to go first, either way.
It's up to you. What do you want to do? You want me to go first or you go first?
Yeah, you can go first. It's no problem.
Okay. So let me get ready real quick.
I'll go ahead since you're getting ready
Okay, go
and
go
get
go
mine
ahead.
out the
Yeah.
way. Mine is going to be pretty succinct and short.
Okay.
Um,
That way I go.
yeah, yeah. So really, my closing would just be a recap of pretty much my opening and everything. That the origin in the beginning, God is the begging the question fallacy, because it's never shown why we should believe that this God explains anything. In fact, what archaeology and scholars have told us is that Yahweh, and even Genesis, the creation account, comes from Sumerian, Babylonian, and Canaanite religion. Even the name Yahweh is a Canaanite war god that Israel adopted many years later into their own national religion. So that's where the Bible comes from. It comes from other cultures that came earlier. That's where it comes from. And it just evolved from there. Meaning, genuine meaning is derived and not prescribed by definition. So only a forced meaning can be prescribed by some book of authority and command. So no, the Bible can't give you genuine meaning, no internal meaning. It can only suggest if you do this and do that, you might find meaning in it, but we know that that doesn't always work. Even Jesus admonished his disciples to shake the dust off their feet and keep it pushing. Predestination is the same thing as determinism. So if you're going to argue that determinism is wrong, then you're going to have to drop predestination. But Ephesians 1:5 says, "In love he predestined us for adoption as sons through Jesus Christ our Lord." So predestination is taught in the Bible. That's just a fancy word for determinism. So trying to argue with me about determinism is kind of refuting your own beliefs in the Bible, because the Bible believes in predetermination. Um, Miracles are a violation of natural law by definition. A miracle is also an expression of a divine will. There's no way for a historian or scientist to evaluate whether an event like a miracle was ever solid as presenting evidence for some 2,000-year-old book. It just isn't, because there's no way to verify the miracle. and they're usually thrown out in court. If someone was to say, I killed my neighbor because God told me to, they're going to throw it out of court every time. Um, Again, we mentioned that, once Victor said, if you deny the resurrection of Christ in the Bible as history, it means you have to throw out all of history because it refers to things that did exist. So you just have to keep the whole thing. Well, that's a fallacy in reasoning. For example, according to Roman mythology, Romulus is the older twin of another god. He and his twin brother Remus were the founders of Rome. Rhea, who's known as Sylvia, also known as Ilia, was a mythical mother of the twins Romulus and Remus who founded the city of Rome. Guess what? Rome really exists. Okay? So does the rivers from which they were born from, and all these things. Does that mean we have to also believe that Romulus rose from the dead and appeared to the head of state in Rome at one point? That he was whisked away in the clouds when he died? Is that true too? No, you wouldn't be believing that because it's stupid to believe that kind of stuff. All I'm saying is be consistent. As far as I'm concerned, the Jesus story is comparable. Why would I say that? I'll try to make this real quick. For the purpose of the resurrection story, it helped that classical myths and legends were rife with stories of miraculous happenings during and after the death of an iconic Greco-Roman figures like Hercules or Romulus. In one way or the other, they were all portrayed as being deified upon their death. This was thought to be a fitting epilogue to the glorious life that someone may have lived because they performed great deeds and miracles during their life, just like Jesus. The audience did not necessarily believe that these stories of apotheosis were true, nor did they ask to believe that their historicity. Rather, the motive for this archetypal protocol was to insist on fables as a way of conveying truth. That's how the ancients conveyed truths, through myths and stories. William Lane Craig calls it mytho-history. William Lane Craig also believes this. He believes Adam and Eve were not real people, that they were just figures in mythology, but that the story told a greater moral truth, just like the book of Job, just like other books, including the New Testament. And the only problem I have with that is I think Jesus' death would be for nothing if Adam and Eve really didn't bring sin into the world. If they didn't exist, what is Jesus dying for? A myth? But that's William Lane Craig, and that's mainly most scholars. That's how people did history back then. You have to understand that that was a different culture back then. In today's world, we're more rigorous about facts and figures and statistics and things like that. Back then, they didn't care about all that kind of stuff. They told stories that conveyed bigger truths to each other. And that's what the Bible is. It's not that it's necessarily false. It's just not true in the way we think it's true. It's true in some other sense of the word, maybe. So does it better explain existence? No, because we have science now that actually talks about the facts, the figures, the mathematics that explain how things work in the universe. Bible doesn't do that, nor was it meant to do that. It was born in a culture where they didn't care about that kind of stuff. Anyways, that's my story. I'm sticking to it, and we'll let you guys decide whether the Bible explains existence. Go ahead, Victor. You take off, man.
Okay, thank you, Scotty, for this debate. I haven't debated in a while. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Does the Bible best explain existence? And Scotty agreed with me. I asked him on the first question, do you agree with me that the jet engine could ever come into existence without a human agency? He said, yes. Do you agree with me that a dictionary could never come together with all its semiotics information without human agency? He said, yes. Do you agree with me that if we were to wake up in Mars and see a house, we run to the house and see all human necessities like food, clothing, and all kinds of survivor kit, that it was prepared by someone? He said, yes. Do you agree that if we were to find a computer of a murderer, now watch this, computer of a murder and find such information in the internal hard drive? He said, yes, we could find it. But once I said into the brain of a murder, he said, no, which means consciousness and mind is irreducible to physics and chemistry. Okay? When he says, I agree that if we wake up in Mars and we see a house with all these human agency availabilities and human survival. It takes a mind, it takes a human to have that prepared for us. Ladies and gentlemen, in Genesis 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Do you agree with me that a jet engine could never come into existence without human agency? He said, yes. I asked him. Then I asked him about the informational law, which is in the dictionary. He knows exactly that all these things, as we know in reality, come into existence with human agency. That's all my argument. Then I asked him a very, very important question. Is it ever okay to murder an innocent grown man? He said, no. Ladies and gentlemen, then I said, is this okay in any part of the world? He said, no. That's objective moral value, independent of human opinion, and its objective moral values exist, then God exists. Then I said this, and I think he probably understood that I was trying to refer to the eyewitnesses of the resurrection. But let me tell you something here. I asked him, if one person alone agrees, no, if one person alone claims that a dragon exists in the closet, and he comes and tells me, I'm justified to say, I don't believe you because there's no eyewitnesses, there's no evidence to ever believe you that there was a dragon. But then he says, even if the whole city tells you that there is a dragon, he said he still wouldn't believe. But the reason I believe that Scotty said that is because of the multiple eyewitness of the gospel, which is okay. But listen, in a court of law, if the whole city is telling you somebody murdered somebody and the whole city is witness, guess what? You're guilty. So in this case, I don't agree with Scotty, and therefore the probability of eyewitness testimony is true. Jesus Christ existed. He claimed to be God. How do you falsify the resurrection of Jesus Christ? He says it can't be falsifiable. Yes, it is. Listen to the greatest claim in history. This is the empirical claim. Jesus Christ said in John chapter 2, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. And the disciple says, oh, he was talking about bodily resurrection. Ladies and gentlemen, that's falsifiable. If somebody's claiming to me, I'm going to raise from the dead bodily, not spiritually. Listen to me. He admitted it when we were on this questioning. He said yes. But he says no here. Then, number 9. Could you explain that if the Bible is a false book, how did it best explain existence and reality? Well, that went down the drain because our time came up. So here's my conclusion. The Bible explains that God exists. The Bible explains that the universe came through agency. Scotty in the cross examination agree with me totally. That's called the taxi cab fallacy. That you know that this simple thing came on by human agency, but because it seems so bigger, no, it doesn't. Ladies and gentlemen, like Dallas Willard said, any concrete physical entity, the explanation is outside of itself, not in itself, which means the creator is transcendent of space, time, matter, and energy. Does the Bible best explain reality? Yes. I ask him a simple question. How, in a court of law, if you are a determinist, how do you defend a murderer who admits to be a determinist and that he was determined to murder an innocent child? He said he could not, that he's still guilty, which means he rose above determinism and he relied on objective moral value, which comes from the Bible. Therefore, determinism is indefensible. Determinism there in a federal court of law cannot be defended by his own words, which he admitted. He got to come to my worldview and say, wait a minute, that is wrong. I don't care what he even said, I don't even care if he says he's determinist. So does the Bible clearly explains existing? Yes. So how do you explain that a false book like the Bible explains that there's objective moral law, that it takes agency to create? I didn't say how the universe was created. If that was in, I would have been reading all these kind of cosmology books. All I'm saying is this: that the Bible is making simple claims. The universe were created by God. Objective moral values exist, therefore God exists. Determinism does not happen. We're talking about predetermination. In other words, God meant for you to do something, but guess what? I have free will, and He admitted it in the court of law analogy that no matter what happens, I could decide, no. Even if you claim to be determined, guess what? Objective moral values do exist, therefore God exists, and I'm holding you higher to a law. Even though you're determined to kill a child, you're guilty. The Bible best explains reality. Now, watch this: consciousness and mind. I told them in the robot analogy, if I go into a computer, could I find the information of the murderer? What did he do if he stored it in the internal hard drive? He said yes. But once it comes to dig into a dead man, he says no. Why? Because consciousness and mind exist outside. And look what is the Bible says. And God breathed life into men. In other words, we are more than physical people. In other words, we have a body, we have a soul. In the medical terms, consciousness and mind is separate from the body and the soul. So, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, my prediction still stands. The Bible best explains reality. Scotty's whole argument was that the Bible is a forgery, that the Bible is a copy of mythicists. We could argue that if he wants, and later on. But guess what? I still hold to this question: how does a false book best explains reality? Because determinism doesn't. Thank you.
All right. What a tongue lashing that was.
Hey, last time you got me because you said, Victor, you got to prepare yourself. And I'm like, okay, I got to prepare.
I'm proud of you. You did a good job, man.
Hey,
You did a
I
great
tried my
job.
best this time. Hey, man, been working 12 hours. It ain't easy, I'll tell you, man.
Yeah, I know. I know. Thanks a lot though for doing it. Thanks Diesel for showing up, man, and modding and keeping things under control and everything like that. Hey,
My daughter
there's a
just
baby
bought this
girl.
puzzle for us to do, so we're ending at good time.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Okay,
Well, this
so
was a really good time. I appreciate it, and hopefully next week we'll have some other guests. And like and subscribe if you like what we're doing here. Trying to keep discussions lively. And man, thanks for coming on, guys. I appreciate you.
Scotty,
Thank you
thank
guys. You guys
you
have a nice
again.
day.
Hey, thank you again, Scotty. Hey, man, I appreciate you me having me here. I hope we can influence more people to debate. And remember, one of the greatest groups on the Facebook is Fight on the
Fight
Fans,
on the
baby.
fence, baby.
Fight on the
By
Fans.
the way, Victor, great job. I mean, trying to defend Christianity straight out is a pretty hard. It's a pretty hard task. It's something that I don't take on routinely. But you did a decent job. So
Thank you, Vic. All right,
okay.
guys. Have a good night, man. Thank you.
All right. See
Bye.
y'all.
Bye.
Bye bye. All right. Thanks, man.